I would like to begin by paying my tributes to the visionaries who thought that there ought to be a space such as this, the Global Learning Academy, to which would come people from all around the world. So wherever you are today at this point in time, whichever parallel or meridian or whichever coast, continent or country you are in, I would like to offer my very best wishes as you make sense of the world we live in, as afflicted as we are by the global pandemic. I would like to hope that all of you are keeping well and safe and looking after yourselves and your loved ones. In the introduction, it was mentioned that members of this community, individuals who support a cause. I happen to be a member of the audience today, and certainly the cause that I support is life. And I use certain means to help support this cause called life, primarily education, development, my love for the environment, and indeed for our institutions that we have inherited from our ancestors. I'm not an expert on urbanism or organizations. I'm primarily an educator, but I see things from a certain perspective that would include institutions such as the ones that the Global Leadership Academy, I understand, supports. When we look at cities, I feel that every city has at least two lives. One is the outer life that the eyes can see, and the other one is the inner life. The outer life is manifested in terms of the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the buildings, the banks, the institutions, the different paraphernalia that support life, communication, transportation, housing, health, environment, safety issues, your convenience stores and entertainment facilities, the city administration, what the eyes can see, that is something that is the tangible part of the cities. But I would also like to believe that every city also has an intangible, the subjective life. And it is this subjective life that very often gets ignored or not discovered at all. In Bhutan, His Majesty the Fourth King, Dugyalpo Jigme Singye thought that a society or a nation ought to look at progress in a holistic way, marking a very significant departure from the conventional GDP model of development measured by gross domestic product. And in 2010, the Ministry of Education of the Royal Government of Bhutan decided that the country's holistic development vision of gross national happiness has got to be infused with the overall management of our schools and institutions. So we introduced a program called Educating for Gross National Happiness. And His Majesty's vision of gross national happiness is holistic. It is supposed to be what I call the North Star. Every nation ought to have its own North Star, just as indeed sailors and mariners long ago, before precision equipment of the type that we have today were invented, looked at the North Star to find their direction to the safety of the port. So even today in the 21st century, countries, societies, people do need the help of the North Star to give them the sense of direction, the safety of the port. So His Majesty thought that Bhutan's development trajectory would have to be guided by our own North Star called gross national happiness. And if a nation has a North Star or a big vision like gross national happiness, the subsystems of that nation ought to embrace and advance that vision. So Education Ministry being a very large subsystem or the most important subsystem of the nation, we decided that it ought to do its part in advancing the country's holistic vision of development called gross national happiness. So we introduced a program called Educating for Gross National Happiness. And the strategy that we identified to advance this vision is called green schools, building green schools for green Bhutan. So I have to explain what green is. Green is a color, but more importantly, green is a metaphor. It is a metaphor for life. It is a metaphor anything and everything that supports life. Life in its multiple variety, human life, animal life, bird life, reptiles, life in the sea, on land, in the sky, and everywhere in between. So a green school, so we can have a green school that supports learning in a holistic manner. We can have a green economy. We can have a green city. We can have a green government, a green society, a green nation, a green mind, a green heart, a green outlook, a green orientation. So green is anything and everything that supports life. So when we talk about a city, whose claim do we address when the city is planned? Whose claim? Is it the claim of the builder? Is it the claim of the environment? Is it the claim of the citizens, the people who dwell in the cities? Is it the claim of the corporations? Claim of the factories? Claim of the money makers? Whose claim do we address when we design a city? So just as in education, we have to address the multiple claims of the learner over and above the intellectual claim that is addressed generally by contemporary education. So also in city planning, we have to look at the multiple claims of those elements which make that city. So let me very quickly show you my mandala or the green school that can actually be replicated to where's my, that's okay. I want to hide. So in my green school, the first element is that of the environment. So in the same way, when we plan a city, I believe it is important to address the claim of the environment, the natural environment, I mean. Does a city have a natural environment? Today we are talking about, in the pandemic period, we're talking about the preciousness of oxygen. So when our natural environment is rich, it has space for humans, for animals, for birds, for all kinds of life forms. A naturally rich environment is extremely important for life to survive and to flourish. So when we plan a city, does the city have this understanding of the need to address the claim of the environment? Do our planners think of the integrity of the city that is built by a rich natural environment? So the second element of a city could be the social environment, how rich the social environment is, how rich, how interactive, how supportive the social environment in the city is. Is the city planned in such a way that people are able to come together, interact with each other, support each other in times of need, and also celebrate together when there's a moment for celebration? Or do the people live in isolation like islands? How is the city planned? So the social greenery, how green is the city socially, just as how green is the city naturally. So the claim of the natural environment, the claim of the society, and the claim of culture. What are those cultural elements that make the city? How concerned are the planners? How concerned are the builders about the cultural artifacts? What are those cultural icons? What are those cultural landmarks of the city? Are there places for great cultural monuments? Are there places, opportunities and spaces for the celebration of the diverse cultural manifestations of the communities who come together to animate the city? Is that city culturally rich? What the kind of fine art there? What the kind of music there? What are the kinds of different artistic expressions, cultural expressions of the city? Are there cultural diversity in the city? So the cultural greenery is an extremely important claimant in the planning process of the cities. And of course, we have the intellectual greenery. How intellectually green is the city? How rich? What are those ideas that have gone to the making of the city? Were the minds highly awakened? What did the minds, what are those ideas that went into the making of the city? So the cultural greenery of the city is an extremely important claimant on the planning process. So when we build the city, when we design the city, we have to think of how culturally green is the city. The next element is academic. So what are those important milestones in the city? I believe that if the most important milestones of the city are our great universities, our great colleges, our great schools, our great learning centers, if the heart of the city is defined by a seat of learning, by a temple of learning, whether these are great institutions, great schools, great colleges, great universities, if the defining element of the city is a temple of learning, is a seat of learning, or many cities, many seats of learning, we can say that that city has its soul in the right place. But conversely, if the city's defining elements are factories or corporations or huge commercial centers, we can say that the priorities are a bit misplaced. Part of the reason why there are so many problems all around the world in big cities is because the defining features, what are those elements that elevate the mind, open the heart, lift the mind, and extend the range of people's sensibilities? Are the sensibilities awakened, or are they are they are they dead? What are those elements? So I believe that it's extremely important to have these great academic institutions to be at the center stage of our cities. Then we have what is called aesthetic greenery. Aesthetics. How do we plan our cities? How are the buildings like? Our buildings, our structures have to fulfill at least two functions. Are they useful? And at the same time, are they graceful? Do our buildings, our structures, our facilities, how graceful are they? Or are they ugly collection of buildings, structures? So aesthetic greenery. Does aesthetics have a place in the planning of the cities? Or do we only make them to be economically, practically, commercially useful? So in order for the city to be pro-life, in order for the city to be supportive of life, supportive of human beings, in which people feel happy to be, this is going to be extremely important. The aesthetic sense. Are we sensitizing the people and facilitating the awakening of the aesthetic sense, the sense for the ability to appreciate beautiful things, graceful things, tasteful things. How are the buildings laid out? How are the walkways, the gardens? Are there open spaces? Are there places for museums? Are there places for artistic work? So artistic sensibilities, do our cities awaken the artistic sensibilities of the citizens who occupy, the people who occupy the cities? So aesthetic sense. The third element, the next element is spiritual greenery. Whether we like it or not, we are all spiritual beings. And spirituality has nothing to do with religion or religiosity. Spirituality is about our need to appreciate things which are more perfect than ourselves, which are better than ourselves, which are sublimer than ourselves. Our tendency to look for things which are more perfect, which are more firm, which are more complete. So just as just as the flower kept by the window side tends toward the sun for fullness, for flourishing, and to be complete, so also the city inhabitants should be able to see certain things in that city that can lift their mind, that can awaken them, so that they tend towards those objects which make them extend the range of their life, extend the range of their sensibilities, extend the range of their of who they are. So does the city have those monuments, those tokens, those objects that can awaken those spiritual sensibilities of the people who live in the city? So finally, what are the ethical considerations? What are the ethical considerations when we plan our cities? Today, all around the world, most of the considerations are directed towards meeting the commercial, physical, material needs of the people who live there. But does the city, what are those principles? What are those defining elements that make the city? Does the city have those sensibilities in which the people are able to make a distinction between right and wrong? Are the people who live in the cities able to make a distinction between good and bad, truth and falsehood? At the end of the day, the life of the city, the integrity of the city is actually defined by the ability of the inhabitants of the city to be able to distinguish between right as opposed to wrong, good as opposed to something that is called bad, truth as opposed to something called untruth or falsehood. Imagine our cities which are able to make a distinction between right and wrong, good and bad, truth and falsehood. These cities will be happy cities. They will be livable cities. These cities will be pro-life. All the problems of lack of security, insecurity, fear, poverty, discrimination, inequities will not be as pronounced as they are today if we are able to plan our cities not only from the tangible, objective point of view, but also from the intangible, subjective point of view. Things which are visible to the eyes, but also things which are registered by our sensibilities, by our soul, by our heart. So in the planning of our schools, in the planning of our colleges and universities, in the planning of our economy, in the planning of our business, in the planning of our cities, if our sensibilities are awakened by our consideration for our natural environment, for the claim of the society, for the claim of culture, for the claim of ideas, claim of knowledge, claim of aesthetics, claim of ethics or morality, I believe we can build cities which are happy cities, cities which are pro-life, cities which extend the range of people's sensibilities, and cities built along these lines will make beautiful societies, happy nations, and a happy world. So even though I designed this model for our institutions, this can also be replicated in all areas of our life, in our planning. So we can have a green school, a green college, a green university. By the same token, we can have a green city, a green society, green business, green industries, green planning, green parliaments, green legislation, green judiciary. So green is something that is, green is an organizing principle. Green is an orientation of mind. Green is about life. So my green school is not only about education or schools. My green school is about life. It is about our planet Earth. It's about development. It's about the environment. It's about everything. So this model of a green school can also be a model for a green city. So this is what I thought I would present before you, for whatever merit it may have. If there are some issues later or queries, I'll be very happy to try and respond to those. So this is my model of a green school. It can very well be a model for a green city, a happy city for that matter. Thank you very much indeed.